friends, and welcome back to my homestead. Today I want to show you how to make a very simple, no frill, no stress sourdough bread. All you need is few ingredients, and one of them you do need sourdough starter. A good friend of mine, Anna, has shared few tablespoons, I think like 4 or 5 tablespoons of sourdough starter back in early summer, maybe like 5-6 months ago. And I really didn't do anything to it because I didn't want to bake in the summer. It's too hot to bake in the summer. So I just fed it once with a little bit of water and a little bit of white flour. I stirred it all up together and I put it in the fridge. And to be honest with you, I forgot about it for a couple of months. For a couple of months, I didn't do anything about it at all. And then I saw it sitting in my fridge. I'm like, oh goodness, I've got to feed it again. Because see, what happens with sourdough starter, which does not have commercially produced yeast, instead it has natural yeast that we have in the air. And that's how it bubbles up and it grows and that sort of thing. And that's how the bread will rise, using natural yeast that exists in the air. So a couple of months after it's been sitting in the fridge, I took it out again. I added another 2 tablespoons of water, 2 more tablespoons of flour, just regular white over-the-counter flour. I mixed it all up together and I stuck it back in the fridge for another few months. And then when the cold winter, cold fall right now months came, and my family's like, Mama, we really like your bread. Can you start baking your bread again? Because they know the home-baked bread is so good. There is no comparison. I am not joking with you. You can't compare. Of course, you can go to a artisan bakery and buy their baked bread, and it's wonderful, but it's also super pricey because that is the whole idea of baking bread and selling it for profit. I totally understand it. But when you want to eat on a budget, be a little frugal, save a little penny here and there, I strongly advise you guys to learn how to bake a simple and healthy bread. Next time when you buy a loaf of bread, of any loaf of bread, if you ever want to, like, flip it around and look at the ingredients that are on the back of it. There are preservatives there because yes, every bread needs to be extended shelf life, and there will be some chemicals added to it that have no business being in bread. I'll show you the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ingredients that should be in a home baked bread. And let me tell you, it's not gonna last. It's not gonna go bad in your household. You know why? Because it's so delicious and it will be gone in 1 day, or maybe stretches for 2 days. But I can promise you, it will be gone fast. And even if you do have some leftovers, guys, remember, there's so many things we can make with day-old bread. We can make breadcrumbs, bread croutons, we can make bread pudding, French toast, you name it. So many good things that you can make with it. So let's talking more making of this bread. So this bread will require some extra time. I allow my sourdough bread to rise for 12 hours, which means tonight, right now it's 9 p.m. It's almost 9 p.m. And I'm going to set it up this evening. And then tomorrow around 9, 10 in the morning, I will bake it. So plan ahead. About 12, 13, 14 hours is perfect for the rising time of this bread. Okay, so let me show you the things we're gonna need to make this dough. And by the way, this is gonna be no kneading required dough, just stir together. So I'm gonna start by showing you, I have a 4-quart stainless steel bowl. That's where I'm gonna be mixing all of my ingredients, and that's where the dough will rise. Also I'm gonna need some warm water, and this is a regular tap water. It's a well water, actually, I should say, so it's not chlorinated or anything like that. It's a 1.5 cups of warm water, 1.5 cups. To that 1.5 cups of warm water, this is my starter. And I don't know if you guys can see it. Look how bubbly it looks, little bubbles inside. So I'm going to take 4 tablespoons of that starter, okay? 4 tablespoons. It doesn't have to be exact, but close enough. Okay, so about 4 tablespoons. And I'm just gonna dump it right into the water. Okay, and that is gonna be my starter to make my sourdough bread. Okay, 4 tablespoons. All right. Before I put this away, I will feed it tonight, and I'll show you that in a minute. All right, so I have 4 tablespoons, and all I'm doing, I'm just going to stir this all together, just like this. Okay, so my starter dissolves in the warm water. So in case you guys wondering how warm this water should be, pleasant to touch, meaning that it's a little bit warmer than room temperature, but not hot. If it's hot and unpleasant to your finger, guess what? It can kill the natural yeast, and we don't want that. We want to promote this yeast growth, but not killing it. So it can be room temperature as well, but I like to work with slightly warm water. Okay, to this I'm going to add natural honey, and I have raw honey from our bees. This was a late harvest, and look how dark and beautiful this honey is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of honey. 1 and 2. Okay, and this is going to add a natural sweetness, but trust me, it's not going to be sweet bread, not at all, but it's going to help this natural yeast something to eat and grow. Okay, so I'm just going to stir that all together. All right, let that stir all together. All right, let this just guys sit aside for now, because now we need to put together dry ingredients. And for dry ingredients, in my large mixing bowl, I'm going to add 3 cups of white flour. Now you guys can decide what kind of flour you want. I am using unbleached organic white flour. Okay, unbleached, and nothing added to it. I know there's a lot of different flours that have additives to that, though this one doesn't have anything. So 3 cups in here. And then I'm going to be putting half a tablespoon of salt. Okay, and you guys can decide what kind of salt you want to use. The best salts I find are Celtic sea salt or Himalayan sea salt. I try to stay away from regular table salt that only has sodium chloride. All right, so I'm going to stir all of this together. So 3 cups of all-purpose flour. Okay, and I have unbleached white flour and half a tablespoon of salt. All right, so this is all mixed. I'm going to make a little well inside, something like that. All right, and I'm going to pour my wet ingredient that I have. Just pour it right in. Okay, let me make sure everything is out of this spoon. All right. All right, and now all I'm doing is just with a wooden spoon or any spoon of your choice, I'm just going to stir everything together. And this should take probably about 30 seconds to 40 seconds. Really, it's not anything prolonged. So like I said, there's no kneading. My purpose right now is just to mix the wet ingredients into dry ingredients and make sure that there's no flour left on the sides. Make sure everything is incorporated, and guess what? It's already been put together. That's it. There's a little bit of flour left on the bottom. Make sure that's all mixed. And guess what, friends? That's it. All I'm gonna do right now, I'm just gonna cover with some plastic, okay? Because I don't want anything to dry up. So now this dough I'm going to leave on my kitchen counter. You don't have to put it into any special place. It's a room temperature. It's about 68, 69 degrees in my kitchen right now. There's no need to put it in any kind of warm place or self-rising place. None like that. Leave it in your kitchen counter just like this. You may throw a towel over it if you want to. and let it sit for the next 12, 13 hours, okay? Because you're gonna start seeing this rise and double in size, at least double in size, and everything's gonna be bubbly and jiggly like that. And then tomorrow morning, I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna bake it. It's so simple. Once you learn how you make sourdough bread, you guys will know that it's so much more convenient and much more healthier for you than purchasing something with a whole bunch of additives and yeast. So a couple of reasons why I like to make sourdough bread. Number one, it does not have commercial yeast in it. There's some literature out there showing that yeast actually contributes to candida growth, the unhealthy gut bacteria growth. It promotes yeast growth. It promotes and actually contributes to other diseases. And I don't want to get deep into that because I don't want it to sound like a crazy mama lil, but there is literature showing that too much yeast, commercially prepared yeast, is actually not good for us, okay? And I know that sourdough is actually a natural yeast that's found in the air. It's actually better for our digestion. People who have gluten sensitivity tend to tolerate this better. So friends, sourdough bread is gonna sit here and rest for the next 12 hours, at least 12 hours. In the meanwhile, I want to show you how I'm going to feed my starter so I can use it again tomorrow or the day after. Okay, so here's my starter, okay? And I'm just going to open the cover, and it's still plenty left in here. It's probably 1/4, I want to say 1/4 in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add about, since I took out 4 tablespoons, I'm going to put back 4 tablespoons. 4 tablespoons of water, okay? And I'm gonna put similar amount of flour back as well. I'm not gonna be very specific at measuring, but about 4 tablespoons as well. And I'm gonna stir everything together. All right. So stir everything together. All right, it became all uniform. It mixed with the previous, what was on the bottom. Okay. It's resembles batter for thick pancakes. It's like a pancake batter, okay? See how thick it is? All right, so it's like a thick pancake batter. All right, so I'm just gonna make sure everything goes back inside. I'm gonna put a cover on. And I'm gonna leave it on my counter, just like this, okay? And I'm gonna start seeing it rise all the way to the top. If I was not planning on baking tomorrow or the day after feeding my starter, I would put it in the fridge. Cover on, I would keep it in my fridge because if I'm not going to be using it, and trust me, it's going to eat up the glucose that's actually in the flour, so that yeast will continue growing even in a cool environment such as fridge. But trust me, my family's been begging me to bake for them every day, so I've been baking every day, every other day, because it's so delicious. Okay friends, 12 hours has passed, almost 12 and a half, close to 13 hours. And I guys want to show you what the dough looks like now and what I'm going to be doing with it next. Again, my method is very simple. No frills, no stress, no special equipment, super simple. Now look at this dough. I'm going to take the plastic covering off because that's what kept it from drying out. And it's set in my kitchen overnight for 12 and a half hours, and my kitchen got pretty cool at nighttime. But look how bubbly it is, and it has at least double in size, and look, it's a little jiggly even. All right, so that's what's gonna give my dough, my bread, to be super soft. Now I need to do something with it, so I'm gonna take some flour, and I have my regular white flour, and I'm just gonna put a little flour on the surface that I'm gonna be working with. And you know, professional bread makers, sourdough makers, they have this special method of of turning this dough and shaping this dough, and it's all wonderful and it's all great, but it's not a very necessary step. So what I'm doing right now is I'm flouring my hands as well, because I'm gonna push the excess flour to the side. I don't need so much, because now I need to dump all of this dough onto the surface, and it's a little sticky. It's pretty sticky, I should say. All right, and I'm just dumping it out, dumping it out, dumping it out. Okay, so everything is out. And I have this little scraper. It's a plastic little dough scraper. I don't know the proper term for that, I'll be honest. But I got it from, I think this is from Pampered Chef, actually. And I'm just gonna dump it all together, because you don't wanna leave any of this good dough left in the bottom of the bowl. All right, so a couple of things I like to be reminded when I'm working with dough. My mama always told me that bread is one of those essential foods that we need to provide for our families. And whenever we're baking bread, is important to do it with good attitude, doing it with love, making this bread to nourish your family, doing it with love. Because for many women of that time period, and my mama grew up during the war, and she said, you know, for women, the most important thing is to feed the family. All right, so I'm just flouring everything. And what I need to do now is I need to fold this dough into fours, almost like an envelope. So let's see if it's gonna work. You can use this special, this little scraper if you want to, or if you don't have it, just lift it up and tuck it in and push it in, okay? Again, flour your hands, tuck it in on the other side, kind of pull a little bit and push it in. All right, again, I'm gonna lift it up here and push it in. And the last one on this side, I'm gonna lift it up, kind of pull, and I'm gonna push it all inside. That is pretty much it. So now what I need to do is I need to take a clean bowl, or you can just take the old one and just wash it, okay? And I'm gonna line it with parchment paper. And I have regular parchment paper, okay? Just rip a piece that's gonna cover the bottom, and I kind of push inside a little bit, just like this. It doesn't have to be perfect, okay? Just like that. All right, and now I'm just going to lift up all this dough, hopefully I can, with one motion, and flip it upside down, so all that folded part will be at the bottom. Okay, readjust it. All right, again, I'm gonna take that plastic that I had, and I'm gonna cover everything, because I don't want anything to dry up. In the meanwhile, I'm gonna go over to my stove and let this just sit on the counter, just like this. So I'll take you guys over to my stove. So now I'm going to warm up the oven to 450 degrees, and I'm gonna use this cast iron pot to warm it up first. So I'm gonna put it in the oven empty, just like this, with the cover, the whole cast iron pot. I'm gonna put it in a stove right now, okay? And I'm going to allow it to come to 450 degrees. So the cast iron pot will be hot, the oven will be hot, and the dough is just gonna sit and kind of rest on the counter. Okay, so while the oven is warming up and the cast iron pot is warming up, and it's gonna take a few minutes, I wanna talk to you guys about what may cause sourdough bread to fail. Now, I am not a professional baker, so these are my own methods. This is like tried and fail kind of methods. So again, these are not the proper techniques. These are just my techniques, but it works for me very well. It's super easy, and I have not failed in my sourdough bread making. Couple of things. Number one, it is important that you have a good starter. Okay, how do you know it's alive, and how do you know it's doing well? When you look at it, it's gonna have nice little bubbles. Let me bring it a little closer. It's gonna have nice little bubbles on it, right? And when I smell it, it has a very pleasant, mild, yeasty smell. Nothing strong, nothing pungent, but it's somewhat resembling almost like mild kombucha or maybe mild beer, but very, very pleasant and not strong at all. It's not one of those sour smells that kind of like hits you in the face. Not at all. Very, very pleasant. And because I'm using it frequently, I'm keeping it on my counter. If I was not using it frequently, I would store it in my fridge where it's nice and cold. Now, you guys saw me yesterday because I took out 4 tablespoons of starter. I replaced it back and I fed it and I stirred it all up again. And then later in the evening, I noticed that the starter dough went all the way to the top. And then this morning it came down again. It's very normal, okay? So today, it's perfect for me to use it. Now, if you're looking at your starter and it's flat and the liquid has separated from the solids, it's not very active right now. So the dough will not be active. The dough will not rise either. Because this is a fermentation process using natural yeast that we have in the air. And that's why this dough is beneficial to us rather than using commercially prepared yeast. The other way to check to see if the starter is good and viable is to do a float test. So let me show you what it looks like. All right, so one of the ways to check it is a float test. So I have a glass here with room temperature water, and I'm gonna take just a little bit of the starter dough, okay? And I'm gonna dump it into the water and it should float. And look, and it's floating at the top. Hey, can you guys see it? Oh, it's still floating. A piece of it fell down, but it's floating. And that's how you know it's full of air and it's perfect to be used right now. The other way that sometimes I know you can have a failure if you overwork when you're shaping it. So I know that there are professional bakers that shape it by pulling it and folding it, a lot of it. But I feel that in my case, it's unnecessary. I just pull, fold on each side to the middle. So those are the 4 little folds I make, and that's it, and that's enough. The other thing I find that it's important is that I put it into a hot oven, and my Dutch oven or my cast iron pot is also hot. Okay, and that will bring that final fermentation, that final rise, because when you put it in the oven and it like puffs up, that's the final step. That's how we get those really big bubbles, air pockets in our bread, and it's nice and puffy. Also, because my dough is very loose, you saw how soft it is, and it's actually sticky to my hands. That's what gives my bread nice and soft texture, okay? And it gives a nice crust because there's still a lot of moisture in the dough itself. Some people spray water on their dough before they put a cover on. Some people put like a little separate dish with water right in the oven. I don't do any of those things because there's been no need, because my dough is so moist and it has enough moisture to give a nice crust on the bottom and on the sides. Another thing that I don't do that professional bakers do is I don't score the dough. I know sometimes it's fun to make a specific score on it that is very particular to you. It's almost like baker's signature, and it's fun and it's exciting to do that. But because my dough is so soft that the scoring is not necessary, it naturally scores itself and it separates naturally, and it gives a nice golden color on the crust. So there's been no need for that. So you probably have noticed that I did not score my dough at all. All right. So the oven is going to warm up in a minute, and I'm going to show you the next step. Okay. So the oven warmed up, and the alarm went off. Now I'm going to be using my big oven mittens because it's super, super hot. Okay. So here is my hot cast iron pot. I'm taking the cover off. Let me move the camera closer so you guys can see it. And my dough that I had here covered, see, just like this with the parchment paper. I'm going to be picking up the parchment paper on 4 sides just like this, and I'm going to be placing it inside gently, okay? Place it inside. I'm going to put the cover back on, okay, because that's going to create its own internal steam. All right, and now I'm putting it back in the oven to bake. All right, so the temperature is 450, and I'm going to set the timer for 30 minutes. So 30 minutes at 450. Half an hour has passed, and now I am going to take off the cover. All right, take off the cover just like this, and ooh, look how beautiful it is. See that? And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let it sit in the oven open for the next 2-3 minutes and just get a little bit more golden. Wow, look at this beautiful bread, huh? Come on, guys, I think it's awesome. Listen to it. Can you hear it? So I didn't score it, and yet it scored on its own beautifully, naturally, and it's super soft and it's crunchy. All right, it's still hot, and I really shouldn't be cutting it now for you, but I want to show you what it looks like on the inside. So let me grab a knife. Oh, the steam is just pouring right out. Ooh, look how beautiful. You see all these air pockets? And look how soft it is. Look at this. Ah. And it smells so good. It doesn't have a strong sour smell, because sometimes I find that the bakery or the commercially prepared ones have a stronger smell. This one is not. This is so nice, and it's my family's favorite bread. So I'm gonna put it back together. I'm gonna allow it to cool off before I serve it to my family with some soup later on today. Look at this, guys. It's so beautiful. So friends, I hope you are encouraged to bake home bread at home. So simple, very simple ingredients, nothing to it. And it's so delicious, and it's more beneficial to you than store-bought breads. I encourage you guys, look at the ingredient list in the back, okay? And then you say, okay, what did Mama Lil put in her sourdough bread? And it's so simple. If you don't have a starter, there's a way to order that online. Ask your homesteading friends and neighbors, because it can be shared. So friends, be encouraged and try something new.